Hey folks, Paul Essery here, and I'm delighted this morning to be with Michael Osborne from Accessible Me. Michael, thanks for taking a bit of time out. I know you've been trekking up and down to London doing all these events and things, so I know you're busy. So I appreciate you taking a bit of time out to come and have a chat with us. And I also am really pleased that you're coming to talk to us. You're doing something that's I think people will find fascinating. So for the folks that are listening, I mean, tell us a bit about yourself and tell us a bit about the business, and then we'll talk a bit more specifically about what you're doing with the tech in a moment.
Sure. So first and foremost, thank you for having me on today's podcast. A little bit about me. So my name is Mike Osborne. Pronouns are he, him, and I am the founder and CEO of a company called Accessible Me. Now, Accessible Me was founded in March this year, so we've only been going a few months, but I myself have been doing what I do on the side of full-time work probably for about 7 years now. And our mission at Accessible Me is to make all of the world's content accessible to all of the world's people, so especially those with disabilities. And my journey has been somewhat of an interesting one. So, if you go way back to when I was a young lad, I was inspired by kind of the CGI and things like Toy
Yeah,
Story
yeah, yeah,
and Jurassic Park, and I wanted to be an animator first and foremost. I did my work experience at a company called Infusion Games in Puckle near Bristol, and I then decided actually the animation route is a cool way to get in games is a cool way to kind of get into the industry. So my degree, I then decided I was going to do video games at university, and that really got me into the gamification and various things like that. You know, it's always something I've loved from the old days of Sonic on my Sega Mega Drive, etc., all the way through to kind of playing Assassin's Creed on a more relaxing way.
yeah.
Now, going way back again to when I was about 7 or 8 years old, I was sat next to my best friend during art class, and we were both pretty talented kids, but when it comes to art on that front, and I remember this vividly one day sitting next to him when he drew this amazing picture of Scooby-Doo, and the next time I looked over, he'd colored it in green, and I remember thinking, it's odd, and I hadn't really been privy to anyone with disabilities before that, not knowingly, so at least. So when I questioned why he'd done it, that's when I learned for the first time that he was colorblind, and he got quite upset to know that light had been shed on this, and I remember feeling terrible for quite some time. So for his birthday that year, I bought him some Crayola pencils, which the lovely thing about those is they have the name of the color
Yeah,
printed
yeah,
on
yeah.
the side. So he knew Scooby should be brown. He just couldn't see otherwise. And he says to this day that is one of the most thoughtful gifts he's got. And it really opened my eyes to, oh, such a small thing makes a big difference, you know. And now, if you go back to what I said earlier regarding my degree, some of your listeners may have heard of things like sprints, agile sprints, or hackathons. One of the things that the games industry sometimes does is called a game jam. So you have 48 hours to make a game on any given theme, which is decided on the day. So you can't do any preparation in advance. And back in 2012, it wasn't a global game jam, it was a local one. Somebody from Aardman Animations was there, the people behind Chicken Run and
Yeah, yeah,
Wallace and Gromit,
yeah.
and they set a challenge of how many accessible features can you work into your game within these 48 hours. Now, my team didn't win, and that was the first time I'd come across the term accessibility. Um, but I really had my eyes open to what is achievable in that time. So I was inspired straight away. And even though I was in my final year of university, fairly late in the stage of writing my what do you call it, my computing project and things like that, I decided actually this is something I want to do. I want to commit to. I want to help people through technologies. So going back when I said I've been doing what I do for 7 years or so, in 2017 on Twitter, I started a daily campaign called Accessibility Tip of the Day, where I shared a
Right.
tweet-sized tip, helping people every single day. From there, that got picked up, and I was asked to do a podcast on accessibility, and later invited to do video podcasts and things like as well. And then in 2020, well, about 8 years, I'd been in the learning and development industry at the time. I was I'd come across this thing called the Learning Technologies 30 Under 30. Now, it had been running in America for about 6 years, and it was the last year I could enter here in the UK, despite it being the first year running. I would have turned 30 in the October, and this was being selected in the February. So I thought, oh, why not? Let's give it a go. Do you know, I've got nothing to lose. If I'm not selected, I don't lose out. But thankfully, I was selected. So I am one of the UK's first 30 under 30 for the learning technologies, which is a
Wow,
fantastic achievement.
well done.
And on day two of the conference, Donald Taylor, so the session chair, he asked two participants on stage a question of, and the question he asked me was, what are the challenges you see walking around the exhibition in the industry? And I couldn't resist that opportunity. So even though I was nervous as hell, I couldn't resist the opportunity to speak on accessibility and say, actually, walking around, I see the same issues with contrast, with small fonts and things like that. And it got well received on social media. It got people talking, which is exactly what I wanted. And then later that year, I was invited to speak at the Learning Technologies Autumn Forum, which was on the topic of accessibility. And that was fantastic for me. And I think my career kind of skyrocketed from there. I've built my reputation to be probably one of the key, like three or four people in the learning development space known for accessibility. And people known for accessibility outside of that, but the likes of kind of myself and Susie Miller, who quite literally wrote the book on accessibility. Um, I am now one of those go-to people, and
Sure.
I'm fortunate to work with some massive clients and some much smaller clients too.
Sure. Now, you mentioned that your goal is to make all of the world's content accessible to all of the world's people, which is a
Yes.
fantastically ambitious goal. I mean, but I like a bit of ambition. I
Yeah,
mean,
I'm an
but
ambitious person.
well, that's a good thing. I mean, but it's one thing to say it, it's another thing to do it. So tell us about
Yes.
how you're going to do it, how you're using technology to enable that to happen, because that's a phenomenally big ambition. I mean, just tell us about how you're going to approach that and how you do it.
Absolutely. So it is absolutely a big ambition. And one of the ways so at Accessible we do three things. So number one, we audit content against the web accessibility guidelines. If people, and we produce a report off the back of that. And if companies have the resource, time and resource to do it themselves, we wish them all the best and we are here if they support it. But quite often they approach us because they either don't have the time, because one of their clients is asking for it soon, or they don't have the in-house expertise. So if they see something such as ARIA landmarks, they get scared or they don't know what to do. And our second service then is providing support and remediation, and I'm privileged to have suppliers and partners who can help me on both of those two key areas. One of which is a company called Wally, an American company, and one of the things they have built, which I think it really excites me, is they've almost built a Wix type web builder, which is accessibility focused. So it will
Wow.
check your website as you go along, and automatically make recommendations using AI. Now, our third and final offering is training on the topic of accessibility. So helping people, helping companies do it themselves. So one of the reasons, even though I was terrified and not a public speaker, that I took that public speaking opportunity a while ago was to raise awareness. And I figure if 10 in every 100 people I get in front of just make two differences, the potential reach
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
going to be massive.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah. Yeah.
I am not out to make millions necessarily, although that would be nice, but I'm out to help millions.
Yeah.
And one of the things I have done under that training umbrella, which really excites me, is what I call allyship. So our accessibility themed escape room. And I launched that just over a month ago now in up in Edinburgh at the
And
Learning Network's Mastery Day. It was on accessible learning.
sure. And tell us, I mean, escape room is quite a well-known phrase now. I mean, tell us about
Yes,
how because this is quite clever. I mean, tell us about how you've made it work in your setting. I mean, just talk us through what that means. Because I think people have one idea of an escape room. I think you had a
yes.
different idea. I mean, just talk us through that.
Oh, I absolutely can do that. So when our clients approach Accessible Me, quite often they might be like a middle manager, so they have teams of people, but they have people above them, and they either need to convince leadership why they need some investment, why they need some money to do this thing, or they have a team of people who are going, "We're already busy. Why are you asking us to
Yeah,
do
yeah,
this extra
yeah, yeah.
stuff as well?" And I want people to understand that if you're not designing in an accessible way and you're excluding people, ultimately your work isn't done. It's not finished. But quite often people don't design to exclude people. You know, they're just not aware they are doing it. So the escape room builds on the notion of something called an empathy lab. An empathy lab is where you simulate different accessibility conditions or disabilities in a safe environment um, in their own time. Now, what we're doing with the escape wrap is the term allyship means to kind of be an ally to a minority group. But where I've done a play on the name is the A11Y at the front half of the name is short for accessibility. The abbreviation A and Y with 11 characters between, so is a
Yeah,
commonly
yeah.
used acronym. And I thought, well, if I'm leaning in on the ally side, why not play with the ship side as well? So the idea behind this escape room is a disgruntled former employee has locked you out of all these systems on a company away day. So the company has put on this cruise experience for you. It's meant to be like a team building thing. And once you're there, you're locked out of the system. Now they're not after Bitcoin and they're not after money. What they want you to do is to prove you give a damn about people with disabilities. So they have laid on a series of different challenges, which might simulate different areas. So that might be cognitive processing. It might be testing somebody's dexterity. It might be simulating things like deafness or low vision. It might also be mobility or speech. So we have a series of different tables in the room, everything from the table which simulates low vision or some of the kind of blindness. I have 10 pairs of glasses, for example, which they each one simulates a different visual
Yeah.
condition, such as tunnel vision or double vision, you know, those kind of things. And one of the things that really stood out for me when we ran this thing at the open day in Edinburgh was one of the participants got quite emotional. Now she had one of the 10 conditions, and she was saying it's amazing. She didn't know such things existed like these classes, and she had her partner in the room, and she was saying to be able to show my partner how I see or will see, because it's a degenerative eye condition, is amazing. And so she's like, I need a pair of these for work. And that one thing in itself made it all very much worth it for me, do you know, because it's simulating real conditions and making an impact. Now we also have things like dec a pair of gloves, for example, which limit your is the dexterity in your hand. So if you were to go about day-to-day tasks such as using your keyboard and mouse, and you have things like keyboard shortcuts might be a problem, or you know, just
Yeah.
doing your shirt up on a morning could be a challenge. And so the idea behind uh, the escape room or the empathy lab is essentially to give people a first-hand experience of what it's like to have an accessibility, not to build sympathy. Do you know, I'm not trying to make anyone feel sorry for people with these conditions. The idea is how can we remove the barriers? And
Yeah.
ultimately, the escape room is just a vehicle in how I deliver the message. The really important part of the escape room is the debrief that happens after. So we go, okay, now what? So you've experienced these different conditions. How could we make the workplace a more inclusive place? Now, one of the ways I have thought about allocating who's on what role to start with is almost with like playing cards. So you'd have to pick up a card, and that would tell you which disability we're simulating at the start of the session. Um, Playing on the notion of in life we have to play the hand we're dealt. You know, we don't often have a
That's right.
choice.
Yeah,
And
that's
and
right.
towards the end of the session, I say, okay, so without putting the card you have away, pick up a second card. Do you know, because a lot of these conditions are intersectional. So
That's right.
we've looked at it, you've
Yeah,
experienced one,
yeah,
but you could be deafblind, for example, or
yeah,
you might have dyslexia and autism. Do you know, a lot of, and it gets people quite nervous. But then we reveal, okay, we're not actually going to do a second round. All I'm looking to do here is to raise awareness of it's all good looking at these things in isolation. But if I take the deafblind example, if a lot of what I do for somebody who is deaf doesn't work for somebody who's blind, for example, you know, like the captions or things like that. So the challenge becomes very different. And that is where I tools like artificial intelligence really excites me because going back a few years ago, I decided I would like to make a really cool experience for somebody who is deafblind, a training experience. Because quite often, what anybody with disability gets is a PDF alternative. And come on, we can do so much better than that.
yeah, yeah.
Now, when ChatGPT was released just the other year, I was really excited because now I know we have the power where I can take any content on any topic. And if you think of those old school branching scenario books, you know, make a decision, go to page 27. Now, to use artificial intelligence to go, okay, I can branch the scenario out from where the choice that the person has made. If I have a braille reader, then if you are deafblind, you could engage with the experience. And if I have a very simple input device, you can kind of pick A, B, C, or D. Where is the scenario going to go from here? So tools like AI, when I set the
Yeah.
goal, I was like, I want to do this by the time I'm 40. Now, because of AI and the advancements in there, I'm confident that I can achieve this within the next few years. So, the more money we get from doing what we do, we're not a charity, we don't do this for free. But the more money we can raise through doing it, the more I can invest into these experiences, technologies like
Um,
AI,
yeah.
and really drive things forward.
And when you look back over, I mean, you've been on a bit of a journey, I mean, over the last few years. I mean, when you look back on that experience, because it wasn't something that you planned to do, was it
Yes.
originally? I mean, what have you learned from that experience?
I've learned a awful lot. So when I was at university, I saw the serious games route a stepping stone into the games industry. I wasn't going to stick around, but when I saw the impact of what we do has on people, you know, these weren't games for passive reasons. You know, they actually make a difference. People going away and starting their own businesses off the back of these things. Now, to be able to do that on the accessibility front, that gets me out of bed in in the morning.
Yeah.
Do you know,
As
my
do they.
I mentioned earlier, do you know that I'd like to reach millions to help millions, and I saw on TV recently, do you know, people doing innovative things with the kind of wheelchairs and stuff, and it helping them go up steps and things like that. So really exciting things are happening, and I'm due to speak to someone fairly soon who is using kind of smart glasses, almost with like the car tech, you know, which looks like
Yeah,
for
yeah,
obstacles and
yeah,
stuff
yeah.
like that, to help them move around. So
And if you were
what?
to go back to the beginning, if you were to start over, I mean, what
Yes.
one piece of advice would you give yourself on the back of what you've learned?
Oh, that's a fantastic one. What one piece of advice? I think what I would do is to start slowly and build over time. Do you know, because I'm a completer, finisher. I like to do things to the best of my ability and then look for the next thing. Now, as a kind of small business, to you wear many hats. You are sales, you are marketing, you are
Yeah,
everything else.
yeah,
And I think to do things into balance is one thing, but also I've learned through my ADHD, much more recently actually, how to do project management better. So just making a list isn't going to help me. That's going to overwhelm me. So using techniques such as time blocking and the Pomodoro technique to actually go, okay, I'm going to look at my emails in the morning and in the evening and maybe at lunchtime or something else. But the time between then needs to be focus time, not going on LinkedIn and responding to a message because I'm going to go down a rabbit hole. So those kind of things. So learning about myself and my neurological conditions and digging deeper into that has helped me understand. And as soon as I got into those resources, I'm not alone here. Do you know?
Awesome.
I've spent a lifetime feeling othered and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
I think one of my big takeaways is you're not alone. There's always somebody out there going through similar to you. It might not be the same, and your circumstances will be different, but us men in particular, we need to talk. We need to reach out to people, you know, and look after our mental well-being.
And I mean, just one final question. I mean, you've talked, about where how the journey you've been on. I mean, tell us about where you're going. I mean, over the next, if looking forward, what is it you want to achieve over the next few years? I mean, what kind of impact you want to have? I mean, you've talked about this ambition to make all the world's content accessible to all the world's people. Big ambition. I mean, you've got a bit of a way to
Yes,
go there, haven't you? So you'll be busy.
absolutely, we have.
I mean,
Yes.
tell us about the direction of travel.
So the direction of travel. So short term, the learning technologies 2025, I think is happening in kind of March or April. One of the things I would absolutely love to do is to run the allyship experience on the yacht, which is right
Oh,
next to the
okay.
Excel, because that will properly lay in,
Yeah, yeah,
you know,
yeah, yeah.
play into the allyship theme. So that's one area. I want to build our portfolio of off-the-shelf training so people can learn in their own time, but have quality and question and answer sections. Do you know where
Yeah.
the problem with e-learning at the moment is you get to the end, you might take a quiz, but there's no one you can ask questions if you get stuck. So I want to help people on their journey, and ultimately, when you look at the learning technologies, when you look at these other events, I want them to consider accessibility as part of the success criteria when they're doing awards. Because if they do that, then you're getting people speaking about okay what they have done and what the benefit has been. And the more people do that, I think that starts spreading the word. So my vision for the future is if you think about when we introduced the recycling bins in the workplace and people were like, two bins, that's never going to catch on, and it has, and now you'd be stigmatized if you don't do it. I envision a future where you are stigmatized if you don't make your learning accessible, if you are kind of excluding people and just ignoring the guidelines. And I think things like the European Accessibility Act are going to help. And ultimately, I will keep going until we're no longer needed. But much to your point earlier, I think there's a while to go before we get there. So once I've tackled L&D, I'll be on to marketing, I'll be on to other areas until, you know, where everyone can access everything.
Yeah. Well, Michael, I mean, what a great ambition, and I mean, it's it's great to see the progress that you've made, and I love that idea of the escape from idea. I mean, I think that's a really interesting way of approaching that problem and helping people to understand that they need to change. I mean, it's a great proposition that. So well done on that. And I
Thank
mean,
you.
like I said, a great ambition. So a great project. Good luck going forward, and I hope things. I mean, I hope you make as much progress as you can. Like I said, I think you've
Yes.
got a bit of a way to go, but it's good that somebody's having a go at that, and I'd like to see a bit of ambition. So good luck.
Fantastic, and I hope it inspires any listeners. And if you're interested, just get in touch, and we can absolutely make good things happen. Thank you
Cool.
for having me, Paul.
No worries. Cheers, Michael. Bye bye.